Oh my God, guys, like, I don't know if you caught it, but like the biggest cameo in all of MCU history has just happened with this latest episode of WandaVision. Did you see it? Yes, Bernie Sanders himself was in this episode. And despite the crazy circumstances and this world that's made up completely by Wanda herself, even Bernie Sanders is still preaching Medicare for all, healthcare for all. Considering how viral Bernie Sanders has been going these past couple of days, you know somebody had to do it. Shout out for Andy Park Art for that Photoshop. We are finally here for episode 3 of WandaVision, called Now in Color. And I've been wanting to talk about this episode for so long because I was able to see the first 3 episodes. Once again, thank you Disney and Disney Plus. But because of that, I had this knowledge that I wasn't able to talk about for the longest time because everybody else only got to see the first 2 episodes. But now we are finally here, episode 3. And as you guys now know, if you've seen this episode, which I hope you have, there was a lot that happened in this episode that both had me super hyped and a little creeped out and frightened, because in this episode I feel like you could see the beginnings of Wanda just like snapping. But before I even really get into that, let me do some housekeeping really quick. Obviously, if you have not seen episode 3 of WandaVision, I am talking full on spoilers if you didn't catch that from the title of this episode. So yeah, there's your warning right there. Also really quick, before I jump into my review and recap, please, if you haven't, hit that bell notification button, because on Monday I will also be going live with Fantastic Frankie. I've had her on my show a couple of times, if you guys remember her. And also, if you watched my last live for reviewing episodes 1 and 2 of WandaVision, joining me as well will be Jason Primrose, and we will be doing another live spoiler recap of episode 3 of WandaVision with you guys. So again, it'll be on Monday. Hit that bell notification button. I'm not exactly sure what time. It'll be sometime in the afternoon. I'll make sure to post it in advance enough for you guys to pay attention to that. But hit that bell notification button so you're alerted about the upcoming live show on Monday. So yeah, stay tuned for that. And also, I guess while we're at it, please, if you can, for the YouTube algorithm and for my chat to continue to help my channel to grow, please, if you gain enjoyment from my videos and from this video in particular, please hit that like button. Thank you so much. But yeah, jumping into this episode, if you remember from the ending of episode 2, not only did this episode end with the reveal that Wanda is now pregnant, but this whole 50s, 60s black and white aesthetic began to shift, and it now became what is now known as the title of this episode, Now in Color. Now you're jumping into the whole 70s aspect of television sitcom history, with this episode specifically paying homage to the Brady Bunch. And even when you had this brand new 70s era theme song playing in the opening, you saw the hexagon symbol throughout that opening theme song, which again is an Easter egg calling back to S.W.O.R.D., which, if you remember from the first 2 episodes, does and will play a huge role in this show. And even when this episode just begins, I found myself smiling because the opening score for this episode, and I'm not talking about the theme song, I'm talking about once the show actually starts and you get the opening scene, like, it just felt very sitcom-y to me and just brought all that nostalgia back, because like I mentioned, like, I was a huge fan of all those Nick at Night shows growing up as a kid, which includes episodes of the Brady Bunch. Now granted, I didn't watch the Brady Bunch as much as I watched I Love Lucy, I Dream of Jeannie, and Bewitched. Those are my 3 favorites of Nick at Night, but I still watched a lot of those Nick at Night shows. So I definitely felt like they nailed the aesthetic quality of these old sitcoms. And so this episode opens with Wanda and Vision having her pregnancy inspected by a doctor, and it turns out that Wanda is now 4 months pregnant, even though she's only, according to Vision, been pregnant for the last 12 hours. And so because of that, you see Vision, he's really questioning what's going on, because not only is he not accepting the fact that his wife is now 4 months pregnant in the span of 12 hours, he's just confused about a lot of the weirdness that's been going on since this show really started. And you see Wanda Wanda, she's having the opposite reaction. Like, she's all for it and she's accepting the fact that she's pregnant. But Vision, like, yeah, he's still questioning it. But he doesn't ponder about it for too much. He eventually begins to let it go. But yeah, like I said, all this weirdness is beginning to add up for him, because once Vision goes outside to see the doctor off, he looks over to his next door neighbor, Herbert, which you remember from episode 2. And some more weirdness is happening where Herbert is using his hedge clippers, and it's like he's like digging into the wall that separates the two houses. And it's a very weird scene and a very weird moment that Vision himself is like, that doesn't seem right. But again, he kind of lets it go and keeps moving forward. And so once Vision goes back into the house and notices Wanda, she's now even further along than she was, and is now, it's revealed, 6 months pregnant in the span of only a couple minutes. And so a lot of this episode, you see Wanda and Vision get in their nursery together to prepare for the arrival of her kid. And this is the moment that got me super hyped. There's a conversation that Wanda and Vision are having where they kind of have a disagreement on what to name their child. And Wanda and Vision are both envisioning, pun, that they have a son. And so Wanda wants to name him Tommy, and Vision wants to name him William, after William Shakespeare, but nicknamed Billy. And so once they just name drop Billy and Tommy, like, I just started geeking out and just had a full-on nerdgasm at that point. If you watch my live recap of episodes 1 and 2, you remember me mentioning at a certain point that there was a moment in episode 3 that I just literally started screaming, and I had to tell myself to calm the hell down. This right here was that moment, them name dropping Billy and Tommy, because calling for and wanting Wiccan and Speed, Billy and Tommy, for the longest time. And then not only that, hoping that they eventually introduce Wiccan's eventual husband, Hulkling, for the longest time. And it seems like we're finally going that direction. And just the fact that an MCU property actually name dropped Billy and Tommy, But yeah, so fast forwarding through most of the episode, that's essentially what most of this episode was, where Wanda and Vision were getting the nursery ready for the arrival of their children. But then on top of that, because of Wanda's mysterious pregnancy, it causes her powers to go on the fritz. And that was the bulk of the aspect of this sitcom part of the episode. And now this is where we start to get into the weirdness of this world in general. And Vision continues to question everything that's going on, because Wanda makes a remark saying that because of her powers on the fritz, there's been a lot of close calls that her and Vision have been having with the neighbors in terms of them finding out who they really are and what they're capable of. And that causes Vision to kind of say he thinks that there's something really wrong in this world and something's not right. And in a moment that's kind of very reminiscent to what happened at the end of episode 2, once Vision begins to question things and brings it up to Wanda, it's like the scene just instantly reset itself, and then Vision and Wanda go back into the sitcom aspect of the show. But the thing that I was kind of questioning, that I still am not necessarily sure about, and I'm talking it through right now with you guys, is I'm not sure if Wanda herself was the one that caused the rewind to happen, or if somebody else did it. And the reason why I ask that is because if you remember from the end of episode 1, you saw that there's somebody actually watching this whole WandaVision show happen in the whole real world, in the MCU world. But then on top of that, we also know that Wanda is kind of controlling this world a little bit, because when you jump into episode 2 and you saw that guy in the beekeeper outfit, she said no, and she literally rewound everything back to before that beekeeper guy showed up. So you obviously know that she's manipulating things to some extent. But in this particular moment, there was no indication or movement or gesture or anything from Wanda that showed that she manipulated this moment. And so part of me has a theory that Wanda herself did not create this world. Maybe she perhaps made a deal with Mephisto and he created this world, but now that she's in it, she's manipulating certain things. So I'm not sure if maybe Mephisto glitched things back. I don't know. I'm just spitballing these ideas with you guys. But either way, that was some more weirdness into this world. And if it turns out that Wanda is actually manipulating things, it actually kind of reminds me of season 6 of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where Willow was trying so hard to maintain maintain the happiness and relationship that she had with her girlfriend Tara, that she was willing to erase her memory and manipulate her friends and family with magic. Damn, consequences be damned, which eventually led her to becoming the big bad of that season, Dark Willow. And again, that reminds me of this episode in particular, because speaking of Dark Willow, you see Wanda go into that darkness and become a little frightening when you fast forward to the end of this episode. She ends up having her twin boys of Billy and Tommy. Again, I was hyped, but during this time, you see her next door neighbor who we met last episode, Geraldine, who we also know is Monica Rambeau, the little girl from Captain Marvel. She's now all grown up. She came over while Wanda was giving birth to her twins, and after the twins were born, Wanda casually mentions to Geraldine that she was a twin. And this is actually, I was very excited about this moment, because this was actually the first time since Avengers Age of Ultron that the MCU has even acknowledged Pietro. And so I'm hoping that this was more than just a casual reference, and we do eventually see Aaron Taylor Johnson return as Quicksilver in the MCU, especially now that we know that Marvel has the rights to X-Men again, and we're going to see X-Men in the MCU at some point. I want to see Aaron Taylor Johnson return back as Quicksilver. But anyway, after Wanda mentions Pietro to Geraldine, it suddenly something triggers in Geraldine and causes her to wake up from this sitcom world. And she mentions to Wanda, almost as if she's piecing it together herself, she says, "Your brother was killed by Ultron." And oh boy, that was the wrong thing to say to Wanda, because Wanda snapped. Like instantly, like you saw her almost go very Dark Willow in this moment, and just her voice and her tone and her demeanor begins to threateningly confront Geraldine, and she's like, "What did you say? How did you know that? Who are you?" And this whole moment that this scene was happening, you could kind of see the personalities of Monica and Geraldine competing with each other, as Monica's slowly remembering who she is, but then forgetting and then remembering at the same time, and then also trying to calm Wanda down, because Wanda is becoming very frightening in this moment. And while all that's happening, Vision is outside and he's talking to Agnes and Herbert. They're kind of warning Vision in a way of basically telling him, like, look, they don't know who Geraldine is. She doesn't belong here. She doesn't have a husband. She doesn't have kids or anything like that. And Vision is trying to talk to him like, that's not a problem, like not having a husband and kids. But then they drop that she doesn't even have a home. And Herbert begins to want to tell Vision more, but then he's stopped by Agnes, which kind of reveals to me that everybody pretty much in this town, in almost a very Truman Show type of way, everybody knows what's going on but Vision himself. And it was a pretty eerie scene. And it was also intriguing because I'm like, I need to know more. What's happening? What is this? And so eventually Vision goes back into the house and he asks Wanda what happened to Geraldine. And Wanda says very calmly and very sinisterly that Geraldine had to leave. And in a brilliant moment of filmmaking, it's at that line, that very last line, that she had to leave, that's when you see the aspect ratio of the show expand to widescreen, and you see Monica Rambeau, Geraldine, being ejected from this Westview fantasy world, and then she's surrounded by what I'm assuming are her fellow sword agents, and then the episode ends. And I'm just like, oh man, like this episode, y'all already know, like so far, I love this show, and I think a lot of it just has to do with the mystery and the intrigue that's going on, because I'm just curious to want to know what's going on. And I know a lot of people out there felt that the first two episodes were slow. I personally did not feel that way, but I'm hoping, especially after this episode, you should not feel that way after this episode, because like I said, there was a lot that happened in this episode. And if you still feel like this show was moving too slow for you or whatever, I mean, that's fine for you. Maybe this show just isn't for you, and it's perfectly fine if that's the case. Like, that's okay if this show isn't for you. Not everything is going to be for everybody, but I am loving every single episode of this show so far, and I can't wait for episode 4 to see what happens after this. So yeah, for me, this episode was another blockbuster, but out of the 3, I would say this episode was my favorite. But that's enough of me rambling and going on. The question is, what did you guys think of this episode of WandaVision? Also, do you agree with me in saying that this episode was the best of the 3 so far? Let me know down in the comment section below. Also, if you can, hit that thumbs up button and like this video to really help out the channel. And if this is one of your first time checking out one of my videos, please check out the other videos on my channel. And if you like what you see, please subscribe for more and hit that bell notification button so you're alerted every single time I post a new video, and tell your friends, families, and neighbors about my channel to help me continue to grow. I am 100 subscribers away from hitting 3,000 subs. My goal for this month is to hit 3,000 subs. So I can only do that with you guys' help. So please, 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 please like this video, share, and if you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Thank you guys so much, and hopefully we can make this goal happen. And as always, I will catch you guys next time.